It's good to have you with me this morning. Maybe I'm thinking it's Thursday. I know you could be doing other things with your time, but I'm glad you have decided to spend it with me for this 1 hour. And weather-wise, it's rather nice with a bit of a breeze, maybe some rain, who knows. Don't forget to say hello so I can see who's on. See, there's 4 people thus far. It's great to have you with me. Okay, let's pick up on the news. Excuse me. Just have a drink. I'm a bit parched this morning. Good morning, Laurie. There will be no afternoon tea this week. I'll be busy getting on with the anchor for November, so that needs to be out before the end of the week. So please take note. There will be no afternoon tea, no Bible study this Thursday. So please tell other people that. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Vern. Also note that on Sunday we have a time change and it's fall back. So we all gain an hour. Is that right? Yes, we gain an hour. It's a good thing. And that'll be November the 1st. So please remember to alter all your clocks, going back 1 hour Saturday evening sometime. Good morning, Mike and Jennifer. Regarding the services, they go on as per normal now. It's our kind of new, kind of weird normal. Good morning, Jeannie. 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Now, please contact me if you would like to attend either of the services, and do pass this information on. And if they do want to come, please tell them to contact me beforehand, so that I can make sure that we will have enough room. As things stand at the moment, 8 o'clock, well, both services, it's a pretty good chance that I'll just say yes. But with a proviso, of course. So good morning, Kit, and good morning, Pam. As always, you need to know that masks are required and they must be put on before you enter the building. Before you enter the building. Then they must be worn correctly throughout all that time. That is, they must cover the nose and the mouth. None of this kind of bikini style, just put in the thing beneath the nostrils. And there are absolutely no exemptions and no exceptions to this. So if for whatever reason you feel that you need to remove your mask, then you have to leave the building and then remove it. And then when you're comfortable, come back in. Social distancing is also a requirement because the coronavirus doesn't really care if you've only chatted for but a second. It doesn't take that long. And remember, after the service, please leave directly, and only once you've left the building you can remove your mask, as long as you're socially distanced and there's no one around you. People who should not attend. If you don't want to wear a mask, or you're going to fiddling it up with it all the time and you'll be wanting to take it off, or please don't come. Anyone with a pre-existing condition or who lives with someone who has a pre-existing condition, please don't come. Anyone who has either had COVID-19 or been in contact with someone who's been tested positive with COVID-19 within the last 14 days, you should be self-quarantining. So please don't come. And so we go to the COVID numbers from Johns Hopkins. And the positive cases this week, well, yesterday in the US, 8,704,968. And that's plus 489,363 compared with last week. So that's pretty awful. And to let you know that it's gone up by 70,000 in terms of the rise from last week, and the rise it's higher by another 70,000 compared to the rise in number last week. In terms of deaths, 225,739, and that's an increase of 5,605 from last week. And so it's going up. In Florida, and these are figures which are at least this number, 782,013 positive cases, with 16,449 deaths. And again, the trend is going up. It is not statistically, it's kind of steady, but when you look at them, the numbers are going up, and those are the ones that we get reported. It's just crazy where we are. Where are we? Almost November now. This has been around. We knew about it from January, started hitting us in February. So what's happening in the world? Well, the big news comes from the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who said on CNN's State of the Union, quote, "We're not going to control the pandemic. We are going to control the fact that we get vaccines, therapeutics, and other mitigations." So what we already knew has been made official. The White House is not going to do anything to try and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. But let's break down what he said a little. We're not going to control the pandemic. Well, it's been pretty obvious that this incumbent hasn't been interested in trying to control the pandemic from the get-go, leaving it up to the states to do their best, even while competing with them for the same resources. Remember the time states ordered PPE, and when the plane landed, the feds confiscated the whole shipment? That was reported by Vanity Fair on May the 6th. This was, of course, just a small part of the official lack of response. Most likely, the history books will record the presidential quote, "It's going to disappear. One day, like a miracle, it will disappear." And there's a whole variety of sources, including video ones from February 28th there. But let's get back to what Mark Meadows said. We're going to control the fact that we get vaccines, therapeutics, and other mitigations. Well, he was speaking live, so sometimes you muddle your words up. But if you take that sentence at face value, what it's saying is that the facts about are going to be controlled. And this sounds like so much what newthink and doublespeak to me, the Orwellian 1984 thing. Because although I know the White House is desperate for a vaccine to arrive, I mean, who isn't? The fact is that despite Operation Warp Speed, we'll be lucky to have any kind of vaccine available before Christmas, with Pfizer stating there's a good chance of knowing if the company's vaccine works, quote, by the end of October. And that was on CBS News, September the 30th. But so far, this being the 27th of October, which is kind of the end of October, there's been no updates. In fact, there's been some setbacks with one or two of the companies who are researching a vaccine having halted their trials because something's gone wrong, or at least not gone wrong. The patients or a patient has had some strange side effects. So the whole thing, they check to see if it's nothing to do with the patient themselves. And it's long and complicated. And if you're doing it properly, this is the way it should be. So we're now looking maybe Christmas before we hear anything. And who knows? And then what? Say one of the companies says, okay, we have a vaccine. How is it going to roll out? Who's going to do the rollout? How is that going to be controlled? And when will ordinary plebeians like myself have a chance to get it? It's a big, big thing. Huge, absolutely huge. To therapeutics, yes, there are some, none of them being bleach. The president himself being treated with one of those therapeutics, which is now being made available to more people. Other therapeutics being tested include, believe it or not, the use of vitamin D, or should I say vitamin. But the thing is that research is still working out what this virus is, does, and how it does it. Hello, Anne. Sign in, but on my way to an appointment. Okay, I hope your appointment goes well. The final part of Mr. Meadows' sentence includes the words other mitigations. Now, I would suggest that absolutely everything that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx has suggested would be a mitigation. Masks, social distancing, the two main things other countries have used successfully to mitigate this disease. The two main things this administration has willfully decided not to endorse. And so the number of people getting affected and infected increases, as does the number of people dying. All the while the president states, completely contrary to the evidence, that we have rounded the turn. So this, with what's going on, leads each and every one of us, I believe, to have to think about something for ourselves. It's almost every man and woman for himself now. So how are you going to protect yourself in this new environment? An environment in which many people assume that if the White House doesn't care, why should I? And we know this will happen because people are already acting with this mindset. It'll just be more of them will feel braver to not wear masks, not be bothered socially distancing. So we have to realize that we are not going to change people's minds about this. So we needn't waste our time arguing with them. And it's likely that many locally elected leaders will reduce the precautions implemented to protect all people. So what you need to do is to decide on how you are going to protect yourself. I'd love to know how you're going to respond. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to respond. I'm going to all the more listen to the science and to the experts. All that I do will be based on their evidence. And this includes how our services will be run and how they will be protected. I mean, the people will be protected. It may be that if things increase, I'm not so sure if this is excuse me, wow. I'm not so sure if this is a second wave or a third wave or just a surge from the first wave, because we've never gotten low enough to have a marker which makes any sense. But I don't think it matters what it is. We have to see where we are here and now and see what happens each and every day as another Sunday appears. And I really wouldn't be surprised if we have to take a step back and reduce the numbers to 10 as a maximum. The bishop may say that we should do this. I don't know. As it is, the bishop has set out his guidelines, and they have moved over the months from being 10 with social distancing and masking, etc., to being a percentage, again, with social distancing and masking, and then a higher percentage, all based upon your building, the shape of your church, where the pews are, or the seats, and how you can mark out 6 feet spaces, so that at least 6 feet spaces so people can sit securely. In our case, as I've mentioned before, we can do if it's just 50 people on their own, it'd be 50 to 56 maximum. But obviously, if people come in as couples or live together as a family, then that would kind of help us to get a few more in. But that's it, and that could be reduced back to 10 if things just get worse. The bishop has set those guidelines, but he's also given each rector freedom to ensure the safety at a parish level. That's how each parish is able to assess the maximum numbers that conform to social distancing. It also allows us to tell people, no, you shouldn't be in here because we know our people. And it also allows us to eject those people not wishing to conform to the parish's safety protocols. So that's where we are with 1 week to go for the election. And it's stunningly awful. People dying still, and with what the White House is saying, or at least the administration's saying, um, they're just laying the line for even more deaths. At the there's just no other way of looking at it. They're not going to do anything to stop the pandemic. Okay, so we're 1 week away from the election, and so believe it or not, the US isn't a bubble. It lives in a world that has access to pretty much the same information as we have. And so I've been receiving lots of emails from the UK, I should say, regarding voting. In the UK, voting is, I can't think of anything simpler to do, really. I've never lived more than, let me think, half a mile away from a voting station, as we call them. And in my last parish, it was actually next door. Hope Congregational Church was one of the voting stations. So that was a real pain for me just to get up and open the door and go next door and vote. You needed some form of identification so they could give you your ballot paper, and then you went into the similar kind of box, diddly diddly diddly, and then you threw it in a it's just a box with a hole in it, like a letterbox. I'm not sure if they do electronic voting now. I just don't know. I mean, I've been away for 14 years now, so who knows? But they are just stunned. So they've asked me, is it really so the mess that we see on television, the voting in the US? They can't believe one party is asking courts to reduce the time people have to cast their ballots. That someone high up in the USPS made a decision that kind of basically kneecapped the USPS's ability to get mail out, all done in the name of efficiency. See, they're getting reasonable good news. I mean, in terms of what is actually happening here. And they cannot believe the number of hours some people are having to wait to cast their votes. Well, neither can I. I think I've never paid as much attention to an election as this one, ever. Elections in the UK, people start telling you, well, you get a date. It's always a fixed date of the same time every year. Well, every 4 years, 5 years, can't even remember how many years, but it's always the same day, same month, etc. And 6 weeks before that, that's when the politicking starts and all the candidates come out and you get the flyers and everything. 6 weeks. A minimum amount of money spent, very few ads on the TV, and then you vote, and then 2 days later you get the final results, and boom, it's over. What's going on here? This is how one of my friends put it. If this was Cuba and this was Fidel Castro or some other tin pot dictator, then we could understand what we're seeing on TV. These long lines, this attempt to suppress the vote, and the way things are done. And you can see this when in Russia, when Putin does the rounds saying this is a free and fair vote, but everything's skewed towards him winning. And if somebody's anywhere near getting popular, all of a sudden they're imprisoned or poisoned or both, and they disappear. We're not that bad, but as someone else says, it looks like you're moving towards a banana republic. I can't really argue with that. As I said last week, if those who are up in arms about this election because they think it's going to be a dubious result and not trustworthy, Why don't they get those international observers of elections who go to really dodgy countries to make sure that everything is above board and oversee the elections here? It'd save a lot of people's time. And yes, it would be a bad look, but if you can't complain and then do nothing about it. But perhaps the complaining is being done on purpose. Don't know about you, but I put my mail-in ballot ages ago. I can't even remember now. So yes, that's been and gone. And then I went online and checked that it arrived, and it had arrived, which is really cool. The idea that we can do that is really, really good. But if you were thinking of doing a mail-in ballot, do not put it into the USPS mailing system. Take it to an official drop-off location. And if you've got a smartphone or you've got access to the internet, you can easily do that by zip code or just put in Florida drop-off locations and then add your town or city, and it'll let you know where there is one. Because Florida is one of those states that's been badly affected by the new Postmaster General's efficiency efforts. So if you mail them now, it's not certain that they will arrive in time. Incredible, isn't it? So having said all that, let's clear our minds just for 40 minutes and look at a couple of the readings that were available for Sunday that I didn't touch. The first one being from Leviticus. And this is Leviticus 19, verses 1 and 2, and verses 15 through 18. Oh, hold on, before I start with that. Kit says, any early voting site is a drop-off location, and there are many in Hillsborough and Pasco counties. Okay. And Paul, international observers don't get much enforcement authority, though. No, they don't. But what they can do is highlight discrepancies of what they saw. The rest of the world has a sad face that an election happened unseemly. But that's as far as it goes. Mail-in ballots need to go to polling places now. They'll show as received and counted within 48 hours. That's the problem, Paul. They're not arriving within 3, 4, 5 days. It was on the news last night, us being one of them, one of the places that is problematic in the speed of its mail. But like I said, if you're one of those people within government, especially, who says this isn't going to be fair, get in outside observers, and if they say it isn't fair, then you've got something to handle then. I know they don't have any enforcement authority, and really they shouldn't. But they can say whether what they saw was fair or it wasn't fair, and that would give those who are bleating like sheep something to say, some ammo to give of their complaint. I think Paula's point is that you need to take the ballots to a polling place. Oh, okay. Yes. All right, yes. Yes, take your ballots to a polling place. There are many of them. And the website also tells you if your ballot has been counted. Yes. It took a few days before mine appeared. But it's actually on the materials you get. So just, if you're like me, I just take a photograph of these things so I can just look at the photo later and follow the website. It's all quite easygoing. But then I'm computer literate and a lot of people aren't. Anyway, topic for today, Leviticus 19, verses 1, 2, and 15 through 18. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. You shall not render an unjust judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great. With justice you shall judge your neighbor. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, And you shall not profit by the blood of your neighbor. I am the Lord. You shall not hate in your heart any one of your kin. You shall reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt yourself. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Immediately can see that this segment of the book of Leviticus was chosen to complement the gospel from St. Matthew when Jesus is asked the question, what's the preeminent law? And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength. And the other one is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these two laws hang the law and the prophets. So, here we have it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. It's within a context, though. And that context is the Lord speaking to Moses. And God says to Moses, speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel and say to them. So it isn't just to an elite. It's not just to the religious establishment. It is to all the congregation of the people of Israel. So when it comes to us being Christians, again, it's not for a selected segment. It's not for those who wish to follow a path of holiness more than anybody else. This is for all of us. And the first thing we're told is that you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. This should echo in our heads because as we've been making our way through the Sermon on the Mount, we see that we have to have a righteousness that exceeds that of the Pharisees and is equal to God's himself. And this is what he's saying here. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. So when we hear those words, then we have to aspire to a holiness which is equal to God's. And what does holiness mean? It's not this kind of, star-studded halo that every time you walk into a room, people have to put their sunglasses on and you hear this chorus of angels going, ah, everywhere. Although I have to say, I do. But it's to do with us being whole, as God is whole in everything he does. He's perfect justice. He's perfect peace. He's perfect love. All these things. And that us in our journey to wholeness, or as the word we're using in the Sermon on the Mount, flourishing, we move on that path towards wholeness. And God tells the people what they should be, what they shouldn't be doing, really. You shall not render an unjust judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great. In other words, there's to be no favoritism involved here. So that justice should be straight down the line, and it's not going to be partial one way or another. And sometimes this is difficult for us to envisage because we're so used to understanding that with Jesus, he was partial to the poor and the stranger and the alien and the outcast and the person without a voice and those who are ill. And so it seems like what's going on here is that Jesus is ignoring the word of God the Father and actually being partial towards the poor. But the thing is that by what Jesus was doing, he was highlighting the injustice that was taking place amongst the poor and the sick and the marginalized and the ill. Because every time he did something, for example, the woman caught in adultery, they were all more than willing to stone her to death for committing adultery until Jesus just said, well, okay, if you've not sinned, here's the stone, you can throw it. And then realized that in their eagerness to be self-righteous and point a finger. They forgot that there's a thumb pointing back. There is the injustice. It's the same with those who are hungry, those who are sick. Master, why is this man blind? Was it him, his fault? Did he sin? Or did his parents sin? An understanding that illness came through what a person or the parents had done, or a relative. And Jesus set the record straight there. So when God was saying all these things, you shall not render an unjust judgment, things had been shifted to the point that even though we can say, well, the poor you always have with you, well, of course, there's this, this, and this, well, it's the poor's fault, well, if they hadn't done this, they wouldn't have been sick. Well, they hadn't taken this job on, then they wouldn't be so reviled by other people. Those are judgment statements. And as far as God's concerned, they are unjust judgments. With justice you shall judge your neighbor. Justice comes in many ways, shapes, and forms. Justice also comes in having the correct measures. So when you buy something, then you can be assured that what you are buying is of the quality that you were told it is to be, and of the weight. So you're not putting your finger on the weighing machine, on the scales. So it seems as if you've already gotten there and you're selling short. All kinds of things, which the Old Testament stories go through in great detail. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, and you shall not profit by the blood of your neighbor. Slander, even nowadays, we're in this cancel culture now, aren't we? Where anything you've ever done in your past can be brought up and used as evidence against why you shouldn't be doing what you are doing now, as if people can't possibly change, that the views that people had 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago can't possibly have been modified, which is barking mad. And slander of all sorts is kind of the coinage of most social media now. And it's just gotten worse. And you shall not profit by the blood of your neighbor. There were some cases that people would accuse their neighbor, not necessarily a neighbor in terms of living next door, but in the body of the people. And that person would then be put on trial, and all it took is one witness. And if you were a person of standing, your evidence would be taken over the person themselves, and you would get the retribution that was applied to that particular crime as per the commandments. And if that meant death, that meant that person's innocence, meant their blood was on you. Do not profit. And a lot of this was done for expansion of property or wives. Just think of King David. That was a very, very clear example of how not to go about being holy, for the Lord your God is holy. And then at the end of this first paragraph, God says, I am the Lord. So this isn't a kind of human thing that's being said. It is a divine thing. And then God continues, you shall not hate in your heart any one of your kin. It's the heart thing again. So it's not that, I don't hate anyone. I haven't done anything which actually affected that person's life by putting roadblocks in the way, or I've been tittle-tattling and people who used to like them have moved away from them because of what I've said, and, none of that. But you can hate in your heart. And that is as bad as doing it. And I don't think we get the kind of depth of what this means. People still want to divine a a division between an actual sin and it being in the mind, in the heart. And Jesus doesn't allow us to do that. This is why he says, you've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery, but I tell you, even if you thought about it, you've done it. Well, that's Jesus' word. And his word's good enough. I mean, I might have to take a lot of time trying to parse and understand what he's saying, but there's no way I can sort of cleave those two things when he's put them together. And to try and do that is to make something Jesus said as ineffectual and of little matter. Whereas, again, we have it here. You shall not hate in your heart any one of your kin. And then it says, you shall reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt yourself. So it's not just the idea that when somebody does something wrong, we have to tell that person, you really shouldn't be doing that. But if we don't, we actually become an accomplice in that. Just think of the many times that we've probably seen, things go on. Or maybe not. Maybe some of you haven't. And we've never taken part. And in this day and age, it's even more difficult because what happens if you do get involved? Say there's a crime going on. A lot of people are just going to doom, I see nothing, because of the fear of getting hurt. Because if they're, say, armed robbers or just armed people or just violent people, it could be that you end up worse off for getting involved. In the UK, weirdly enough, there's been many a case of where people have gotten involved, say in a scuffle to take somebody down who's been trying to rob or molest somebody, and the criminal, the one who is doing the robbing or the molesting, actually sues the person who took them down to stop them from doing this, and that person gets arrested and goes to trial. I mean, they talk about only in Florida, but there are cases of only in the UK. Actually, I'm going to say only in England, because Scottish and Welsh law may be different. Yeah, but only in England. And there are some really dumb cases now. For instance, this was Scotland, I think, or it could have been on the borders of England and Scotland, where a guy thought it would be funny to teach his girlfriend's little dog, who had this like Hitler-type moustache, to raise his paw. And so he did. And he put it online, and somebody was offended by that and said it was a hate crime. And he went to court and he lost and he got put in jail. So the English sense of humor has to disappear down the drain in the throes of political correctness. But I'm off topic here. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge. Gosh, that's so hard, isn't it? When somebody does something to you, you're not supposed to do anything. And then you're not even supposed to say, I'm going to remember this, and I'm never going to let go of it. No. You shall not take vengeance. So I say, okay, you just did something wrong to me. I'm not going to do anything about it. Or bear a grudge against any of your people. So I'm just going to forget it, that you ever did that, and go on as if nothing happened. And then the kicker, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Well, I kind of went through the other side of that on Sunday about what about all those people who can't love themselves. But for those of us who can, well, it's incumbent upon us that if we want to be holy as the Lord God is holy, if we want to become whole as God is whole, and in love and peace, etc., then these are ways we do it. This bunch of shall nots ending with a shall, you shall. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And we see it fulfilled not only in Jesus, who, even though he was tormented by the scribes and the Pharisees and the lawyers and the Sadducees, and was mocked, and eventually was arrested and spat upon and again mocked, never said anything. He never did anything to get back at those who did it. He never bore a grudge. And that is how we should behave. He is our model there. But more than that, we have to remember that God loves us, and he doesn't give us a list of things. Andrew, just cast your eyes on this list, and once you fulfill these things, then I'll love you. No, God already loves me. He wants me to move from where I am, but he already loves me. And so we are to have that kind of love, that we see something in every person lovable, because we are to be holy, just as the Lord our God is holy. And isn't it a lifelong task that we have to keep chipping away at ourselves to get rid of the accretions, the barnacles of hatred and racism and sexism and every other kind of ism, to begin on the path towards the wholeness God wishes us to have? It's such a profound journey. And yet, when we claim the name of Christian, and then we take on the mantle of disciple, and we look to the Lord as our teacher and master and Lord, then that's what we have to do. That we start working on these things, working on our favoritism, our deference, working on our sense of justice, so that even those whom we like and highly favor would receive the same sense of justice from us as anybody else. Nothing more, nothing less. That we don't go around slandering or judging people. I should hope that none of us would wish to profit by the blood of a neighbor, but there's many options of just slighting someone's reputation, and then not to hate in our heart anyone. And perhaps the hardest thing, especially in this day and age, is reproving the neighbor, sort of highlighting where someone's gone wrong and doing it in love. It's a really different society in which we live. It's far more volatile and violent. And sometimes I think people do things to kind of goad us into some kind of reaction. I remember being in, was it Publix? It was either Publix or Winn-Dixie a couple of months ago, when the county mandated wearing masks. And everyone but one person was wearing a mask. But there was a kind of general vibe being given off by this guy that just made me think, this guy wants people to sort of say, hey, you're not wearing a mask. He just wanted a reason to kick off. But everyone wisely just ignored him. Unfortunately, the store did nothing about it. They ignored him too. Quote I read yesterday, never forget that justice is love in public. Yes, it is. It's how our justice works, shows how we treat people. So Winston Churchill had a quote about that, which I cannot remember, but it's to do with our prison system and how our prison system defines who we are as a people. If it's one of retribution and trying to break people, it defines you in a certain way. If it's one of rehabilitation and getting people back to be fully functioning members of society. That's another kind of people that we are. If you want to make a profit out of it, do I need to say any more? Okie cookie. Oh, there's the other bit. So that was Leviticus. I hope that kind of helped clean things up a bit. So as I say, you can see the immediate link between not only the Old Testament and Leviticus, but also the gospel for the day, with Jesus saying, tying together, love the Lord your God, and then love your neighbor as yourself, as being the kind of two anchor points that support the rest of the commandments, the law and the prophets. On Sunday, we also had Psalm 1. Now, I have to say, I absolutely love this psalm, but not because of what it says. Well, I love it because of what it says, but not just because of that. Let me read the version we had. I think it was this version on Sunday. Psalm 1. Happy are they who have not walked in the counsel of the wicked, nor lingered in the way of sinners, nor sat in the seats of the scornful. Their delight is in the law of the Lord, and they meditate on his law day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, bearing fruit in due season, with leaves that do not wither. Everything they do shall prosper. It is not so with the wicked. They are like chaff which the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked shall not stand upright when judgment comes, nor the sinner in the counsel of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is doomed. I think just about everybody knows this one. Just because of the way it starts. Happy are they. Yes, Clapper editor. But we now use a Bible version, the New Revised Standard Version, which is inclusive. And I'm getting there. Every time I read this, or every time somebody else reads it, I remember my granddad. And I remember my granddad because when he was an infant, he was born the 29th of December, 1903. And the first thing he said he was taught at school as a 4-year-old infant was to say this psalm by rote. But of course, he would have used the King James Version. And I have to tell you, he was in his 80s when he would sometimes just recite this. He would tell me the story of how he learned this. And the thing that got me more than anything is that when he would recite it in his 80s, he would do it with the kind of same breathlessness as he probably did when he first learnt it when he was 4 years old. And his eyes would sort of go really bright and big. And then he would say, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish." So imagine, he's 4 years old when he learns this. And yes, Clapper editor, it's got man all the way through it. As I said, the version we use on Sundays, the first one I did, is the version we use, it's a New Revised Standard Version, and it's inclusive language, so it's why it says, happy are they. It doesn't lose anything in the translation. So let's have a look at this. And I'm going to use the King James Version just because, Grandad. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. Now, if you remember, I don't know, let me see. We've just done week 16 of the Sermon on the Mount. So we're looking at week 3, week 4 of the Sermon on the Mount, when we actually started on the Beatitudes, maybe week 5, whatever week it was. We took a long look at this word blessed or blessed. And we being Father Lewis and myself, wanted you to understand there are two different ways of looking at this word. When we say somebody's been blessed by God, we have to think of it being a kind of, in a three-decker universe, God doing something to that individual. So it's kind of God down to man or woman or child. And it's something that God is doing directly. But there's another way of using blessed, and this is the way this word is used, that we look at the person and we kind of see that what they're doing now will have some impact and influence into what they're going to become and their future. And this is the way it's meant both here. It's a horizontal thing, from person looking to person and making an inference. This is the way it's meant both here and in the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the meek, etc., etc., within the Beatitudes on the Sermon on the Mount. So imagine I see somebody and I say, blessed is the man or the woman that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. That's what they're doing. They're not hanging around with bad people, nor standeth in the way of sinners. They're not doing things which bring them into disrepute and make them a part of that group of sinners, whatever that the sin may be. Nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. How does it put it here? Nor sat in the, well, it doesn't really help you, seat of the scornful. Those who are just of a negative mindset, and you come in and you join in with that negative mindset. Look at them. Because what you're doing is you're actually breaking what God told you not to do in Leviticus. You're passing judgment on people. You're slandering them. You are showing favoritism between your group. Oh, we're superior, versus the other group. Oh, they're inferior. All within this one verse. Blessed is the person that doesn't get involved with ungodly, or hang out with the sinners, or get involved with slander and scornful wonder at other people. It's a brilliant way to start. And the blessedness here, blessed is the person, blessed is the man, is that it's projecting this walk in life into a future place that includes none of this baggage, none of this scornfulness, or being involved in sinners and so being seen as a sinner yourself and seeking the counsel of the ungodly. None of that. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. In other words, the blessing comes that as you move through your life and you meditate day and night, you become the law of the Lord, then you'll be walking in the path of God. And in his law doth he meditate day and night. He delights in it. So he doesn't delight in these horrible things, but he delights in the law, which again we see messaged in the part of Leviticus we've been given. Verse 3. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Now, think of this desert people. To be told that you're a desert person, told that if you do these things, if you walk in the way of the Lord and meditate on the law day and night, you're going to be like a tree that's not stuck in the middle of the desert, but by the rivers of water. You are going to be so healthy and replenished. And You're not going to be one of these freaky trees that sort of starts bearing fruit. Boop, oh, no, not going to do it. And then has a second attempt. Nope, nope. They just don't grow. You will bring forth your fruit at the right time. And your leaves are not going to keep withering and dying off. I don't know about you. I have a little, I think it's a tree. I think it's two trees, different trees stuck together. I know there's a proper name for it. I'm sure somebody's going to tell me now, because I'm not a tree, grass, person, plants thing at all. Grafted, is that the word? Two trees have been grafted together. Now, it was a couple of years ago, the drought was pretty bad, and they started dying. And it got to a point where I thought, we thought that we're going to have to pull it out. So when I got some spare water, I just started putting some water in there until the rainy season started. And it revived and started growing. Some of the branches died, and it just looked an absolute mess. And then if I forgot to do it and there was a dry spell, tree graft, thank you, then it would start dying back again. This is not that. His leaf shall not wither. Then we also get this, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Now, we see the word prosper and think, riches. Not so. The word prosper applies to whatsoever he doeth. So when we do things, we put our hearts and minds into them, we're going to benefit from those things with our heart and our mind and our soul and our strength. So again, this is focused on what God wants from us, as we delight in his law and as we meditate day and night. So it's not as if, okay, my passion is, seems I've got three here. So just because I try and follow the law of the Lord and I pick up a guitar every so often doesn't mean to say that I'm going to become not only an incredibly good player, but I'm going to be so famous. Because I can tell you, neither of those two things have happened. But it's to do with when we follow that blessed, flourishing, wholeness way of walking with God in his law, that we flourish like a tree planted by the rivers of water. We bring forth fruit and our leaves do not wither. We don't get struck by the sun and desert. And so when we carry through all of this, we prosper. So that's the first part, blessed. Let's look at the second part. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. So the ungodly, they don't even get to bear fruit at all. They are just stuff that gets left behind in the fields. They are stuff which has no value. And even worse than that, it gets blown around. It's kind of reminiscent of the sower went to sow and planted on good soil, kind of thin soil, and then on rocky ground. There's the same thing going on here, that our intentions just show us our heart. And if we don't have the intention of trying to follow the way of Christ through being his disciple and putting everything we've got into that, then the alternative is that we become the ungodly, like chaff. Then verse 5, therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. Let's read the other version, if we can find it. Therefore the wicked shall not stand upright when judgment comes. To be able to stand upright in court is to have confidence that you are able to present a case where you will be vindicated. If you are not able to do that, you kneel to the ground in obeisance and you ask for mercy. in Christ, we have been redeemed. If we follow through as disciples of Christ, then we know our redemption is good, because every time we fall, we call to Christ, who lifts us up again, lifts us up again, lifts us up again. And he stands with us at the judgment and says, he belongs to me, or she belongs to me. Sinners, though, what do they believe in? Well, they may be the people who have more faith in themselves than anything else. They certainly have no time for God. And who knows what their judgment is. Well, it's interesting here because we've got this parallelism going the way through this: the blessed, the flourishing, the whole person versus the ungodly. And we meet it again for the final verse. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. It's interesting that the Lord knows where we are going, those who follow the way of blessedness, follow the way of flourishing, the ones who people look at and say, the end result of what that person's doing is going to be more like Christ, to be with Christ, to be with God, to be able to stand when judgment comes. But the ungodly, they shall perish. But we're not told that it's God who's doing the judgment to make them perish. It's almost as if it's a natural result. Here it says, in the other version, the one we use now, New Revised Standard Version, it says, but the way of the wicked is doomed. There's a slight difference, isn't there, between something that's perished and something that's doomed. You doom yourself, is what the new version is saying. The perish here is being linked to verse 4, where the ungodly are like chaff that the wind driveth away. It's a kind of natural consequence of how you live your life. That leads to the goal of how you live your life. And this psalm is asking you a very simple thing. Which road do you want to choose? Well, thank you for joining me over this hour. I hope you've gotten something out of it and it's made you think a little bit, and you can see how it applies to what we've been talking about, we again being Father Lewis and myself, on the Sermon on the Mount, and how the whole thing works together. The Bible, it may be a whole bunch of separate books, but there's a unity about it, which is absolutely incredible. Because the author is God, of course. It's just that we've got many different writers involved with their own styles, but there's one overarching author. So with that being said, thank you again for joining me. Please do stay safe. Keep me in your prayers as you are in mine. And remember, I will not see you on Thursday. I will be busy grappling with the anchor. Hopefully nothing technical will happen this month. Touch wood. And it'll just work great, and I won't have to kick my Windows machine. Mind you, I do it anyway, just because. But hopefully it'll be out by Thursday night, and then I can relax. So, not Thursday, but I will hopefully see you Sunday, or at least you'll see me. So take care, and God